falling apart. It is that post-conflict period, as you so eloquently mentioned, President Ramaphosa, that can mean the difference between a country sliding back into war or building peace. And that is precisely the area where investment and commitments will make all the difference. And what great news to hear that the next decade will be the Nelson Mandela Decade for Peace. And ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here today at this lunch, and who knows, if you sparkle in your commitments for these next 10 years, maybe there'll be some of those Botswanan diamonds for you at the end of that decade. But you've got to make your commitments and keep them. We've heard from the head of the UN. We've heard from the President of the Republic of South Africa. Now it is time to hear from the private sector. Our next speaker leads a team of some 1,400 people in some 55 countries. And he is a man who's used to getting what he wants. Legend has it that 30 years ago, when he was offered a job at a leading law firm, he said, "I'll take it if you give me a personal computer on my personal desk." Ladies and gentlemen, he got the job, he got the desk, he got the computer. The best kind of man or woman to try to bring peace and prosperity. Please welcome Brad Smith, President and Chief Legal Officer of Microsoft.
That PC is an antique today, believe me. Distinguished guests, it's a real pleasure for me to be here this afternoon and to represent Microsoft. Microsoft was one of the earliest signatories of the Global Compact. In fact, we were one of the very first companies based in the United States to sign that document. And as we gather here and really commemorate the legacy of Nelson Mandela, it's exciting to see how far the Global Compact has come. It's also, I think, important to recognize how far we still need to go. Because as the Secretary General said, we live in a time when we've made substantial progress in so many areas, but some of our challenges remain more daunting still. And I think more than ever, they are challenges that will require the business community and the private sector to step up. Indeed, we come together at what I think is an interesting moment in time, because global companies appreciate, perhaps as far too few people do today, just how important it remains to kindle the spirit of multilateralism to address the problems of the world. It's the leadership of the United Nations family and so many others that the world has looked to for over 7 decades. And yet, as we look to this next decade, it will take more stakeholders from every part of society to come together. Over the last decade with the Global Compact, I think many of us in business have found new ways to contribute. We've found new opportunities to innovate. Certainly at Microsoft, it has inspired us to think about how we can use technology to help solve the problems of the world in new ways. That's one reason we announced this morning a new initiative called AI, or Artificial Intelligence for Humanitarian Action. It's a $40 million initiative that will bring the power of artificial intelligence and the expertise of data scientists and financial and technology support to the United Nations family and to nonprofits around the world. It will focus on 4 important priorities: the needs of children, refugees and displaced people. It will focus on human rights and will focus on disaster relief. Just yesterday, the World Bank announced an important cornerstone of this kind of work, because Microsoft, Google, and Amazon all came together and joined together, despite the fact that most days we compete with each other, to bring the power of artificial intelligence to help the United Nations family better predict families and famines and better move food so it can be where it's needed. This is just one of many examples of where we can use new technology. It's why our AI for Humanitarian Action program builds on another program called AI for Earth that brings technology and data science to nonprofits and universities and startups focused on climate and other environmental issues. It's why it builds on AI for Accessibility to use the power of artificial intelligence to improve the lives of the billion people on this planet who have a disability. Technology can be a game changer. It also, I think, stands for something even bigger than itself. It stands for the power of what we can accomplish when we find new ways to work across borders. Across national borders, as the United Nations has always done, but across new borders as well, in a way that brings the business community together with nonprofits, with governments, with the United Nations, and others. I think we have all learned a lot since the Global Compact is launched. We have even more to learn in the decade ahead. Most importantly, we have more to do. And I think that's what those of us who work in business are used to doing, rolling up our sleeves and finding a way to get the job done. This is an exciting time to think about what the next decade can bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad Smith, for that announcement of his artificial intelligence for humanitarian action. And that mantra, that technology can be a game changer. But as all of you know, technology on its own is not enough. It certainly can make a difference, but human endeavor and commitment can also help technology to make all of the difference. And now I have great pleasure in welcoming our next guest. She's also a very busy woman with a double agenda. She's from Ecuador. She's Ecuador's foreign minister, and she was Ecuador's defense minister, so she packs a powerful punch. And maybe that is what's needed here in this gleaming tower. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the President of the 73rd General Assembly, Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa.
Well, good afternoon. I really hope that you enjoyed your lunch. And this title is very telling, Building and Investing in Peace for All. And I think I was very, very encouraged to hear to Mr. Smith from Microsoft how useful frontier technologies can be for humanitarian purposes, but to fight poverty, to build and construct more peaceful societies. Distinguished heads of state and government that are present here today. My dear friend, Secretary General, he leaves the rooms that I enter, and we are doing this during all day, and it will be like that all week. Dear ministers, excellencies, business leaders from around the world, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Ms. Lise Doucet, for your thought-provoking and generous opening remarks. Your work as a correspondent has taken you to every corner of the world, many parts of it rackled by terrible conflict, unfortunately. This gives you a remarkable vantage point from which to observe and to share valuable insights that we try and create a sustainable economic future for everyone. Thank you also, Lisa Kingo, Chief Executive Officer of Global Compact, for kindly inviting me here today to make a few brief remarks. Your leadership has been vital and inspirational. It has played no small part in bringing together this group of important partners, especially from the business sector. Ladies and gentlemen, it would be entirely remiss of me not to begin by recalling the important work that the late UN Secretary General Kofi Annan played in launching the Global Compact, now the world's largest corporate responsibility and sustainability project some 18 years ago. he would have been delighted to see the flowering of his vision in this room today in the guise of such a diverse, multi-stakeholder group of leaders from the private sector, government, the United Nations, and civil society. His vision and enthusiasm will be sorely missed by all of us, for he knew that strong and inclusive economies and societies that share rewards fairly are indispensable for peace and stability. One of my main priorities for the coming year is pushing for leadership and action for full economic and work opportunities for women, young people, and those with disabilities. Extremely important. That is going to be my priority. Decent work for all, but more importantly, for the economic empowerment of women, for young people, and the persons with disabilities, the most numerous minority of our world. If we are to build resilient and peaceful societies, we have to acknowledge the vital importance of creating decent jobs and prosperity for all. As the United Nations system and governments work to deepen partnerships with the private sector to enhance the efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it is my hope that more attention would be paid to the link between women and sustaining peace. While research shows that economies and communities prosper when more women participate fully in the economy and where there is gender equality as well, women are too often overlooked when it comes to efforts to achieve and sustain peace. So we look to the private sector to design creative and innovative business models to foster the business climate in post-conflict areas, working with women and youth as well. I will look forward to hearing of the many important ways through which the private sector is already collaborating with others. I am sure everyone here is also keen to hear of new and innovative ideas and ways for creating the best conditions for peace and security and for sustainable development. Thank you again for inviting me today. Thank you very much.
Wish you well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And I heard that your emphasis on new ideas for all problems has resonated in this room today, and certainly the new ideas in bringing women and girls into development, into conflict resolution. The data is there. It has an unassailably definite impact on general development and the movement toward peace. We're going to now broaden our look, deepen our dialogue about how is it that the private sector can work in achieving this sustainable development and sustainable peace. So I'd like to invite our three panelists from the business sector: Paul Pullman of Unilever, Norihiro Takahashi, who's the president of the Government Investment Fund of Japan. It is the world's largest pension fund. And Maria Victoria Lorento, who's the executive director of Fundación Ideas para la Paz, the Foundation for Ideas for Peace. Please join me. And please welcome them. Yes.